Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Stella Herself podcast. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. New episodes every Thursday. And if you enjoyed this podcast, if you enjoyed it by the end, don't forget to screenshot, take an aesthetic pic or video of you watching or listening, and post it on your story and tag me. I would love to repost. I would love to retweet all of that. If you're watching this video, you see I have this little Pomeranian with me. This is my friend Bougie Billy's Pomeranian. Her name is Dior, and I was dog sitting her this past weekend. So she's getting picked up later this evening. I'm actually very sad. She was super easy to deal with. And it was just like such a fun weekend having her. And like when people came over, they could like play with her and just, I'm just a very routine oriented person. So it was kind of fun to like, just have that routine of taking her out first thing, going on my coffee walk with her and like feeding her and all of that. So I think she wants to get down, but if you're watching the video, say hi. Should I get a dog? So that's definitely been fun. I hope I get to watch her again soon. And it definitely just gets me thinking about like, do I want a pet? Do I want a little dog? Like, I don't know. I always thought I wanted a cat, but like dogs you can just like do more with as far as like taking them places. But I like love cats too. So I don't know. It's not like I'm necessarily seriously thinking about this, but I've just never really like dog sat before in this way where like they come to my house. And especially just like such a cute little dog is like so fun. How has y'all's week been? Mercury is finally out of retrograde, I believe, the day this podcast goes up. Bro, I think I said it in the last podcast and probably all throughout May, but May, I think because of Mercury retrograde, was such an annoying month. And it was pretty much only annoying as far as like for me at least, as far as like social way. And again, I believe I talked about this last week and even earlier on in May, but it was just like the weekends that were super annoying. Like honestly, I feel like I had a great month as far as content, as far as work. Like I just feel like I was very productive, especially like that first week of May. I think I really started the month off strong. But it was just like socializing and plans. And y'all know my story time about like those bros or like the creepy waiter or not waiter, busboy. And just like every time I tried to go out or be social or make plans, it's not like something went wrong, but it was just like always like a fail. And that's just not really typical for me. Like, yeah, obviously not every night is like, or I don't really go out at night, honestly, but like it's not like everything is gonna be a hit every time, every antic or whatever. But it was just like every single one was just like very not, if not shockingly bad, then just like so I'm glad to have made it out. And honestly, on what was it, Memorial Day weekend on Monday, which was the new moon, I had like one last gathering of the month. And it's not like I was like not looking forward to it, but I was just kind of like, how is this gonna go? It's like, oh my god, everything I've tried to do this month has just like been very like and it ended up just being so good. And like just the vibes were amazing and not like a crazy antic or anything, but just like such good, wholesome, just genuinely amazing vibes. Okay, so that was a great way to end the month and just kind of like, new moon vibes, Gemini season vibes in a good way, end of Mercury retrograde vibes. We're out of the eclipse season, and just like the start of a new month, the start of June, it was just like the perfect little event for all of that. So I'm hoping June is a lot better as far as all of that goes, but like I said, I can't really complain that much because it was a great month in other aspects. So, now it's summer, it's Gemini season, I'm trying to kind of like have a good time. So let me know how your Mercury retrograde was. Classic things are like your car breaks down, or you're having trouble with like customer service, or you send a text to the wrong person, or you have a falling out, or a TBT comes back, or like I definitely had some TBTs come back. Just like classic. So I'm just so glad to be out of that. It was just a very like confusing one. Like I feel like sometimes a Mercury retrograde, and I feel like I always want it to be very just like, yeah, I'm going to reflect. I'm going to have so many realizations. If a TBT comes back, it's like, I'm going to realize something about like my life. And this was just like, not that didn't happen at all, but it just was like frustrating. you know? So let me know how yours was, but we're past that now. I think it's still technically in its shadow for the next couple weeks, but we're pretty much out of it. And especially with that Gemini new moon, it's just a great time to be thinking about, and the start of a new month, to be thinking about your goals for this month and also for just the second half of 2022, you know? Like, what do you want to accomplish? What did you already accomplish in the first half? You know, how do you want things to go differently? And that's why journaling is so important. And y'all, like, not sponsor. I wish they would sponsor me. But ever since my mom got me this astrology planner for this year, she got it for me at Christmas, it's been so much easier to keep track of just like things that happen or realizations I have, or just even keeping track of my goals each month, because, you know, it has a page at the beginning of each month for like your goals of the month, affirmations, and then it breaks down each week, and then it has pages for the new moon and full moon of each month. And I've just been like writing down, like every week I write down like what I did that week, or like who I hung out with, or where I went, like what restaurant I went to, or just something like a tea that happened or a realization I had. And I don't know, I definitely do journal, but I'm not the type to journal like every day. I know some people do morning pages, and that's a great way to keep track of like what happens, but just like having this format that I can use in like a list kind of way, or just like dedicated pages, and just having those guidelines, it's been a lot easier. So if you want to be, I guess, more organized, or just keep track more of like what happens in your life, or like your goals or affirmations or whatever, I would recommend looking into an astrology planner. There's definitely a lot of good ones. And you can obviously just like do it yourself in a blank journal, but it's just kind of nice to have those guidelines. So mine's from Magic of Eye. Again, not sponsored. My mom got it for me as a gift, but I've really been enjoying it. And I wish this is something I knew about sooner, because it would just be so cool. Like already, because we're halfway through the year, I'm able to go back and just see every week of the year, like what I did basically. And it's not like in depth. It's just like, oh, went here, saw this person, this happened. It's like little bullet points, but it just makes such a difference, because you really forget like when specifically stuff happened. Honestly, like Snapchat memories is a great tool for that as well. And I mean, Instagram story archives, like we are really lucky in this day and age to just be able to like keep track of so many things and like have photos of literally everything we do, which is kind of like, but also like it's helpful. But literally the only reason I pretty much use Snapchat is like for the 1 year ago. So I hope you guys don't mind that I've been talking about a lot of relationship type topics recently, but I just feel like they're always so relevant and applicable, and I feel like I'm just always learning something new, or like finding a new article or a new TikTok with like some new info that I feel like we could gain some wisdom from. And also I just feel like I don't only talk about relationship stuff and dating stuff, so like honestly I take it back. This week I wanted to talk about breadcrumbing. So breadcrumbing defined is the act of sending out flirtatious but non-committal social signals, like breadcrumbs, in order to lure a romantic partner in without expending much effort. In other words, it's leading someone on. They literally start this article off. This is from brides.com, which is interesting. But they literally start the article off by saying, you've probably heard of ghosting and gaslighting, but what about breadcrumbing? I'm not sure how long this word has been used in this way, but I would say, especially in this modern age with like Instagram, and especially Instagram stories, but just like social media as a whole, I feel like there's just so many ways that you can breadcrumb or be breadcrumbed, you know? Like, were they breadcrumbing in the olden days? Like, what would you do? Throw rocks at someone's window, but then, like, run away? I don't know. What did they do in the old days? Like, call someone up, but then, like, only talk to them once a month on the home phone? I don't know. So often, you know, I've experienced it. My friends have experienced it. I see TikToks about it all the time. Like, you know, that just confusion when you don't know if someone likes you, but then you kind of justify still remaining interested in them, or like being hopeful because of things like, oh, well, they watch my story, or oh, sometimes they hard eye my pic, or oh, sometimes they will text me. So this article This article is like so good. I will link it down below as always. But they broke down the red flags and basically like why breadcrumbing is like a thing. So it's things like they're less invested in getting together than you are. So, you know, it's like, oh, well, this person keeps replying to my story. But then when I actually, you know, want to hang out or like ask what they're doing, it's like they're always busy. Or if we make plans, they always flake. Number 2, you never know where you stand with them. Breadcrumbers are sporadic, inconsistent, and unpredictable in their expression of interest. They seem warm towards you, but then turn cold. Like they take a long time to respond to your messages, but then it's like, oh, well, they did respond eventually. And then I think one of the most important ones, you can't understand or explain their actions. You're often left confused or frustrated after interacting with them. So I think one of the most important things I've learned in dating and just in relationships in general, friendships, like anything, is paying attention to how you feel rather than trying to get in someone else's head and guess how they're feeling. Because, you know, all you can really look at is the facts. And especially if you're dealing with someone who is kind of inconsistent and like you just can never get a firm grasp on how they feel towards you, they're not going to be the type of person to like clearly express how they feel, obviously. So you just have to go with the facts. And the facts are they're being inconsistent, they are being sporadic, they're being unpredictable, and bottom line, you're left feeling confused and unsure of how you stand with them, especially over a long period of time. There's like low-key a difference between like, oh, you have a crush, and it's like, oh my God, do they like me back? Hee hee. And then like, oh, you gradually get to know each other more, you start to hang out more, and like, you just kind of build that trust, or like, oh yeah, you build that liking of each other over time, versus in a man of time where you're just always left confused and it's never progressing ever. And I see TikToks all the time, especially of like guys giving girls advice of like, bro, like if a guy likes you, you will know and you won't be left feeling confused. If you're left feeling confused, there's a reason for that. And you don't need to know the reason. It could be he's entertaining a lot of other girls. You're not number one on his priority list. He like isn't ready for a serious relationship. Maybe he's scared of commitment. Like it could be so many things. And things that you don't need to take personally. But again, the point is, and the fact and the reality is that you're left feeling confused and just like, I don't know where I stand with this person. I don't know where this is going to progress. It's so hard to have a real conversation with this person, you know, because they're never going to straight out say, no, I don't want to pursue anything with you or whatever, because then you would just stop talking to them, you know? So it has to be up to you to recognize the red flags, recognize how you feel in yourself, trust your intuition, and cut it off. And I think just disengaging is very powerful. I think silence and just like not responding, especially towards men, is like such a low-key power move. And not that you should do it because like, oh, like power move, that'll show him, but just like genuinely for yourself, like you just don't need to engage. You don't need to say, well, I feel like you're breadcrumbing me, so I'm not going to talk to you anymore. You know, like you can just leave it, like genuinely. So then they talk about the reasoning for breadcrumbing, like why people breadcrumb, and it's pretty obvious things. I feel like we all kind of like could guess this, but it's, you know, like they feel better about themselves, they need validation from others, they're narcissists, or they're already in a relationship. And yeah, I just feel like Instagram especially, like, bro, everyone flirts on IG. Like, you and I have both probably breadcrumbed at some point, or, you know, even just like flirted with no, I feel like breadcrumbing is more so like the pattern of behavior, but I feel like everyone has like flirted on IG with no intention of like taking it seriously, you know? So I think just not reading too much into like IG especially is important, because if someone really fucks with you, they're going to, you know, make the effort to try to hang out or whatever. And that doesn't mean you can't be the one to like initiate that step, but it's like, oh, if you kind of bring up like, oh, like let's make plans or whatever, like let's do something, and they like have an excuse or they agree but then flake, it's like someone who actually wanted to take you seriously would not act like that. And it could be totally unrelated, you know, maybe they have anxiety, maybe they have social anxiety, maybe like something actually came up, but it's like, you know, someone who actually fucks with you will find a way to be around you, to hang out with you, to go on a date with you, and you won't just be left like wondering or like trying to make excuses for them in your head, like, oh, well, he's just really busy, he's going through a lot right now. And I feel like especially if you're dealing with men, just take, like, bro, don't give a man who, especially a man who's acting like that, like the benefit of the doubt. especially, bro, when it's a pattern of behavior. Like, oh, he always has done this. Like, it's not a one-time thing of like, oh, my car broke down. I just saw this video of like this girl was going to go on a date with this guy, I think from a dating app. And last minute, right before the time of their date, he's like, oh, I just got into a car accident, and like sent a photo from Google Images of a car accident. It's like, bro, and even stuff like that, you just can't take it personally, because it's like, first of all, they're flaking last minute. Even if they had a good reason, it's like they're lying and literally being so dumb by using a photo from Google Images. So therefore, it's like a bullet dodged. Like, thank God she didn't have to go on the date and waste time, you know? But yeah, I think when you can look at it from the perspective of like, how do I feel? Does this person make me feel safe? You know, validated? Do I just feel clear? Is there a sense of clarity when I'm around this person, when I'm talking to this person, after I'm hanging out with this person? And that doesn't mean, you know, oh, we have to define the relationship after one hangout session or one date. But you know the difference, you know, between like someone who's just a straightforward, honest, like, I don't know, emotionally mature person, and then someone who's like playing games and who's flaky and just like not really that good. I feel like it's so rare to like come across someone who, especially a guy, I hate to say, but especially a guy when like dating and in the early stages of dating and like getting to know each other, it can be so hard to find someone who's like not flaky and like not just like, so you just have to take that as like, no, like they're either not interested or they're just like a bad communicator, and it's like, do you really want to invest time in either? No. And again, like, I feel like silence is the best answer, because it just shows I'm not going to put up with this. And I feel like, especially when dealing with straight guys, they will low-key take any attention as like good attention, you know? So if you're going off on them, sending paragraphs, like, that's not really conveying the same message as if you just like don't engage with their bad behavior. You gotta train them like a dog, okay? And that's not to say don't communicate or like, oh, give the silent treatment, but it's just like here's an example. So I was texting this guy, this was a while ago, but he was like really cute. Like, we would FaceTime. We didn't live in the same city, so, you know, it was kind of like we were talking and then we were gonna, you know, probably hang out when he came back to visit. But like super sweet. Like, he just seemed really sweet, and like, I don't know, he would just like remember stuff, you know, it's like very bare minimum stuff, but he just like seemed sweet. Like, okay, I'll talk to this person. And then we were like talking about working out or something. And then like he just said something that was like, it was so low key. Like, it was not overt, but it was definitely in the sexual direction. And I was just like, ew, because the conversation was not about that at all. And it's like, bro, like, we're not at that stage at all for you to be comfortable, at least to me, for you to be comfortable saying something like that. So I just didn't reply. And so all night went on. And then like half the morning, I think at like 11:30 in the morning the next day, he texted me and he was like, oh, my bad about that. Like, I'm sorry. Like, sometimes I don't think before I speak. I was like, period. Like, if I had just like gone along with that, you know, like, oh, haha, yeah, so funny. Or like, even I feel like if I'd been like, why did you say that? It just wouldn't have had the same effect as like, oh, she's not going to like engage with that. Like, that's not going to work. And someone commented, I think on, I don't know if it was on a podcast or just like on a podcast clip, I don't remember, but this, or even like replying to my story, but this guy was like, you know, it was literally a grown man replying to my story. And he was like, a lot of guys just want to see what they can get away with. So you have to teach them what's okay and what's not. So everything's connected. You know, the more you work on your boundaries and overcoming good girl syndrome, which is, you know, I've talked about that before, but just kind of the way we're socialized as women to please everyone else and like be nice and polite and considerate of other people's feelings and like, oh, I just want to do the right thing, which none of that is like none of those are bad traits or things to practice. But when it comes at the expense of your own boundaries, of your own comfort, of your own happiness, and, you know, the way you want to live your life, that's a problem. When you're putting other people's needs and their expectations of you above your own, that's when it's like damaging. And that's, I just feel like how so many guys get away with shit. And like, you know, I feel like so many women, especially when we're young women and when we're in our teens, like we just experience really shitty things from guys because we don't really know any better. You know, we don't really know that it's okay to say no in certain situations, or that it's okay to like say no, that makes me uncomfortable, or it's okay to just not reply. You know, it's like, oh, I want to be polite. I'm thinking of his feelings. Like, oh. And so I know I've said this before too, but it just makes you think, like, all those guys that go for younger girls, like, why are you 30 years old talking to a 20-year-old? Because you have the power in that relationship, you know? You can't. You won't be able to manipulate a woman your own age or closer to your own age the way you are a girl who, like, hasn't really come into her own yet and knows, like, I don't want to say, you know, her worth, but just, like, knows that you can be a bitch. Anyways, so bottom line, if you're confused, it's a no. And I don't know why I'm, like, just now realizing... I mean, like, I'm not. But I think in last week's episode, I was like, yeah, I realized you can just, like, leave. Like, if you're not having fun, you can just leave. And then it's like, if you don't like what someone said, or you feel like they're breadcrumbing you, or, like, you know, they always, like, want to compliment you on your IG story selfies, but then, like, never, and, you know, this is, like, someone you like, or, like, this is your crush or something, but then they never actually want to hang out with you or something. It's like, you can just not reply to them. You just cannot give them any attention. Like, you can. And I was talking about this earlier as well in a previous episode, but actions over words, you know, like in your crush and someone you're interested in, don't listen to what they say, look at what they do, but also for yourself. Like if you tell a guy, oh, I feel like you're breadcrumbing me, I'm going to stop talking to you, but then you don't actually stop talking to him, versus like if you just stop talking to him. Actions over words, you know, and like our word is bond. So this article sums it up by just talking about how the solution to overcoming being breadcrumbed is to work on yourself and to engage in activities that you excel at and to treat yourself kindly. Taking care of your own well-being is an important step in boosting your self-esteem. You set the example for how others should treat you, so don't tolerate poor treatment. You deserve someone who is willing to give you the same amount of attention you're willing to invest. So many things you're not going to know unless, you know, we talk about them or we define it. Like, just the fact that, oh, someone who's like giving me attention or texting me sometimes, but not all the time, and I'm getting these mixed signals from, that's not just like, oh, do they not like me enough? It's like, no, this is a manipulation tactic called breadcrumbing. You know, like when you can put a label on it like that and like define the behavior, it's so much more powerful because it kind of like you remove yourself from it and you just see the behavior for what it is. It's like taking a step back and it's like, oh, I don't have to take this personally. This is not a reflection on my self-worth or, you know, just my worth in the dating scene or whatever. This is like their deal, their behavior, and it's like I can just remove myself. And like I always recommend to y'all, the book Why Does He Do That? About abusive and angry men is just so helpful in defining, you know, just different types of abusers and the behavior to look for, and it's just such a helpful book because it will literally just have like red flags. Knowledge is power, y'all. Information is power, and I guess that's like why I do these podcasts and everything. It's just like to share what I've learned, and you know, obviously I don't have all the answers, but just like I think bringing topics up and then like we're able to discuss them. It's just like shit like that. Like community knowledge, especially for women, is so important because like, I mean, for any group of people, especially marginalized people, especially just when dealing with like shit, and especially just in dealing with relationships with men specifically, like it's just so easy to just feel like your self-esteem is crushed or like embarrassed, you know, for like going through something or being treated bad. But so many people go through it, and it's like we can just learn about the behavior and the red flags to look for so that in the future, like we know to not engage. So let me know if you've ever experienced breadcrumbing. Yay. Okay, so next topic. I saw this TikTok. I just have to play it for you guys because it honestly just like made me choke up. So let's listen to this.
Healing is not becoming the best version of yourself. Healing is letting the worst version of yourself be loved. So many of us have turned healing into becoming this super perfect version of ourselves. That is bondage, right? That is anxiety waiting to happen. Healing is saying every single version of me deserves love, deserves tenderness, deserves grace. When we get to a place where we see and can empathize with every version of ourselves, even the version of ourselves that we can sometimes be ashamed of, That's when we know we're walking in a path of healing.
Bro, like, have you ever heard something so eloquently said? So this is Kobe Campbell _ on TikTok. I will link it down below. Licensed trauma therapist. Let me follow. That is just so true, though. And it really reminded me of another TikTok I saw by this other therapist who was talking about relationships and saying the perfect relationship doesn't exist. It's about finding someone that you can feel safe. I think he might have even said, like, feel safe being triggered by. Instead of, like, expecting something perfect, it's like just finding someone who's willing, like, finding someone who you can have an uncomfortable conversation with, or finding someone that, like, I don't know, you can work through things with is so important. So then also just, you know, with yourself, like, instead of trying to become this perfect, you know, like that girl, 5 a.m. morning routine, ooh, I'm healing, everything has to be done in a specific way, this is what healing should look like, healing is just like having no problems or whatever. It's like, no, I feel like healing is allowing yourself grace and having the tools to work through, you know, hard times and uncomfortable emotions and hard situations, because, bro, life sucks. And like like, not like life sucks, period. Life can suck. Life can be very traumatic and hard and exhausting and emotional. And, you know, we're human. We experience so many different emotions. Instead of viewing healing as like this place of perfection or, oh, a space where nothing bad will ever happen to me, law of attraction vibes, just don't think about it and you won't manifest. I'm like so true, but like, no, just kidding. I've just realized it's more so about having awareness of yourself, of like past patterns, of your emotions as they come up, and just honestly having like a strong sense of self and a strong mind-body connection so that you can, I don't know, like even just like recognizing when you're being triggered by something or experiencing an emotion, being able to work through it in your body and like let it go. If you feel ashamed, letting yourself experience that shame instead of, you know, just trying to avoid it because like, oh, like if I'm healing, I shouldn't feel shame. Like that's like a bad emotion. That's unpleasant. I don't want to feel that. Like if I was healed, I wouldn't be feeling that. And I really liked what she said about perfectionism, or, you know, that kind of viewing of healing is just anxiety waiting to happen. So I looked up an article, y'all, about perfectionism, why B+ work is the key to healing. So I will link this article down below. VictoriaAlbina.com. I saw myself as not being perfect, as if this was the thing, and in my head, a perfectionist did everything right ahead of time, kept a perfect schedule and stuck to it, always looked impeccable and had the latest fashions. But I didn't call myself a perfectionist. That wasn't me. Like, no way. I wasn't perfect. It was my constant striving, this constantly berating myself for not being perfect, that is the evidence of perfectionist thought patterns in my life. How sneaky is that? I always thought, oh, you could be better, you could do better, you could produce more, always get that gold star, that A+. I would push myself to the brink and often beyond, particularly if someone else was waiting in line to approve me and my work. I was constantly worried about what wasn't perfect in my life, self-critical, judging, harsh, yikes. And I wanted, in this subconscious way, to always produce that A+ essay, to be the best hostess and produce the A+ meal, the A+ blog post, whatever, on and on. This mindset, this thought habit cost me so much emotional and literal time and energy that I now see I could have been directing towards self-care, growth, pleasure, and enjoyment. The energy of encouraging is so different from the energy of striving, pushing to be perfect. One way to understand this distinction between being goal-oriented and getting things done versus being in a perfectionist mindset is to ask ourselves with love some pointed and perhaps challenging questions. So, get ready, all my type A girlies. Let's be triggered together. Okay. Do you ever feel bad about yourself when you don't achieve something in the exact way you want? Do you avoid doing what you long to do because you feel you just won't do it right? Do you worry that others will withdraw their care and love if you make a mistake? Do mistakes make you feel like you're not smart enough, worthy, or good enough? Do you get angry, intolerant, frustrated, or out of acceptance if others make mistakes? Do you judge others harshly? Do you pause to relish in your successes, or do you move on with great speed to worry about your next task? Do you feel like your world would be shattered if you failed or if someone says negative things about you? This one is what really got me. Do you feel dread, anxiety, worry, or stress if you have to learn or do something new? Bro, me. Oh my God. That's why, honestly, like, bro, I really need to, like, get back into it It's just because like Bougie Billy's been out of town, and like that was like my real like tennis like partner. But that's why I really was enjoying tennis so much, especially just like with the friends I was doing it with, because we're all having fun, and like, yeah, we would like learn new techniques, or like Bougie Billy specifically he was always like watching tennis videos and just like, I don't know, just sharing stuff that he learned. And it was just so fun that it's like, I feel like for the first time, especially with a sport, I just felt complete like fun and engagement rather than like worry and like, oh, am I doing this right? Like, am I gonna look stupid? Like, I didn't care about looking stupid, and that was so freeing. So I really want to honestly get back into that. I mean, I'm sure if I went to an actual class with like strangers and people I didn't know, I would feel like, you know, being like this type of person, like I would definitely feel like a little more anxiety about it, and anxiety about looking stupid or not being good enough. But just like, I think, yeah, is that like good advice? Like starting in a safe environment, and then kind of like just realizing like, oh, things that I don't know how to do or things I'm not perfect at can still be enjoyable and fun. You know, perfectionism is a personality trait characterized by a person striving for flawlessness and setting high performance standards, accompanied by critical self-evaluations and concerns regarding others' evaluations. We tend to find ourselves in a mindset or story in which all mistakes will lead to catastrophe and crisis. Perfectionism also often goes hand in hand with eating disorders, depression, and anxiety. Perfectionism can also lead to a kind of paralysis, avoidance, procrastination, because taking action is too risky, or may lead to the opposite behavior where we obsessively prepare, which keeps your brain trapped in fear and worry. Very much me. I read on another therapist page that, you know, when we're under pressure or under stress, like people either tend to overfunction or underfunction. So I guess just like reflecting on yourself, like what do I do when I'm stressed? I feel like I'm more so of an overfunctioner. So I will just try to like do more and more because it makes me feel like I have more control over, I don't know, my life or the situation. But then some people, like, it's like the thought of doing anything is just so overwhelming, and like, oh, like if I do anything, I might make a mistake, it might make things worse, so people just like shut off. So just being able to recognize the behavior in yourself, like, oh, like I'm kind of, you know, doing this. What am I stressed about? Perfectionists not only feel this intense pressure to do everything perfectly, we also feel that we have to appear that our perfection was achieved without any efforts. Often, perfectionists feel deep shame and a lack of worthiness, which is why we try so hard to be perfect. Shame and perfectionism are a tightly woven braid. The inner story goes, if only we could do things perfectly, then we would feel valuable and worthy. And then she also talks about what I was just talking about earlier about the good girl syndrome. To be a good woman, we are expected to always be caring and considerate, put others first, defer to others, be vigilant and relentless about keeping to society's standards of beauty, body size, and all of this then is augmented by capitalism, affecting humans of all genders. Capitalism constantly tells us that there's something wrong with us, and the best way to meet the standards of perfection are to buy products and potions and lotions, pills and potions, and to focus on production over pleasure and joy. And then even with sex, you know, I can't say that on YouTube, but everything is connected, bro. Like, and if you don't know what I'm referring to, it's like, you know, just the idea that it's supposed to look a specific way. Even what we're taught, not even in porn and whatnot, but just even through sex ed, like, this is what happens. And then once the man finishes, the job is done, you know? And it's just so heteronormative and just not, I don't know, I feel like in general, it's just not really a good time for anyone. So shifting your focus to a pleasure-based mindset around that versus performance. So you can apply that to sex, but then you can also just apply that to life. Like, am I just doing this just to, like, do it and, like, oh, I feel like I should be doing this, or this is what my life should look like? Or am I genuinely focused on my experience of life and, like, how it feels, and, like, am I experiencing joy? So when the products and the production fails to transform us, we fall further and further into our stories of failure. The way to tell if you're dedicated to your goals and results you want in your life versus being stuck in a perfectionist mindset is to ask yourself, would it be okay if I failed at this? Failure is beautiful, magnificent evidence that you win for it, and you can accept that things in life don't always go as planned. Failure here means that you learn from the experience and move on. Not beating yourself up or obsessing, just evaluating and taking courageous action to do the next right thing for your life. I'm working towards a goal and result in a non-perfectionist way when I'm happy with B+ work. B plus work is work that doesn't drain your soul. It gets done. While striving, grasping for that constant A plus and persevering on it, ruminating about it, wondering if it's good enough, that's your sign of perfectionist thinking. Done is so much better than perfect. It's just like crazy how many things are I keep saying like, bro, like how many times have I said it in this episode, but like how many things are connected, and especially just like with this. And I think, you know, one of my main realizations this year is just like, and I guess it's like I knew I had anxiety because I still experience anxiety for sure, but just realizing how many things in my life contribute or like I guess are a result of anxiety. Like she said in this post, I didn't think of myself as a perfectionist. Like I'm like, oh, sometimes it's just like, oh yeah, whatever. Like to me, a perfectionist was like, I don't know, that Virgo in class that always had the really like pretty presentation. Like that's what I'm like, yes, I have a specific example in mind of like a girl in my class who was like that. But that's the thing. It's like, I'm like obsessing over, I don't know, the same project, and like, it's like your thoughts. It's like not about, oh, yeah, their final result is perfect, therefore they're a perfectionist. It's like you thinking that your work isn't good enough that means you're the perfectionist, you know? Like it's about your thought process. Like literally the thought of like, I'm not a perfectionist because I'm not perfect is literally you're a perfectionist then. Like, because you don't think it's good enough. Like, oh my God. And just how this relates to the good girl syndrome and therefore setting boundaries, everything. So hopefully that gives you something to think about and reflect on. And if this is something you've never experienced, good for you, period. But I feel like most of us, even if you're not an extreme example, or even if you don't have anxiety or whatever, I feel like most of us do have a little bit of like, I don't know, hesitancy in trying new things. You know, we want to be good at what we do, and it's scary. It's just like point blank, period. It's scary to try new things. It's scary to do something or try something that you're passionate about, you know, because that's such like, oh, especially when you really care about something. It's like, bro, if I fail at this, it can feel like, bro, if I fail at this, like, okay, that's it. Like my life's over. Like my life will have no meaning. Like my world will shatter around me. But that's not true. And then, bro, I saw another TikTok, bro, I should have saved this one. She was talking about dating and just kind of that feeling of like, oh, like that dread, I guess, of like dating and like, oh my God, like I'm so over it. It's just like, and to instead shift your mindset to, I guess, being curious and excited at what experiences are yet to come. Our brains do this thing at like, I guess in preparing ourselves for tragedy, we basically just always think of like what bad things could happen instead of living in like preemptive joy or just even curiousness or excitement. So just applying that way of thinking to just life in general and, you know, your dreams and goals and aspirations and just like how you want your life to feel in the future and now, instead of, you know, thinking of, oh, the worst possible case scenario or, you know, crying over something that hasn't happened yet. It's like, bro, good things could happen too. Something I learned in therapy, and guys, update, I did have to break up with my therapist because it just was like, it just ended up not really being the right fit. I guess I got some tips and tricks, but whatever. But one of the things I did learn is, you know, specifically in terms of anxiety about specific situations, is, you know, if you're an anxious person, you tend to obsess over every single little detail and just be playing it in your mind of like how it's going to go. And we often go to worst case scenarios because our brain feels like that is a way that we can control the situation and keep ourselves safe. When actually, you know, if something hasn't happened yet, there is no way to control how it's going to go. So instead of wasting all that energy, you know, focusing on worst case scenario, which usually it's so far-fetched or just like, you know, it's usually worst case scenario is not the most likely scenario, you know? So she was telling me to instead, you know, I think we were specifically talking about like going on an airplane and how sometimes I just have anxiety on airplanes. So she was saying to just imagine the experience like amazing and just even out of this world, like just goofy, you know. She's like, imagine it's like a spa on the plane and like, you're getting like a foot massage and like they're serving you your favorite food on like a platter and it's just like, oh my God, whatever like would be funny or silly or even just like a luxurious experience, and just kind of choosing to imagine things that you're stressing about, like that, you know, if you're over anxious, that doesn't mean to not prepare or to, sometimes, you know, you got to think about risks of a situation or pros and cons or whatever. But if you're a person who has anxiety, it's like usually you're doing it or you're preparing in just too much, you know, and it's exhausting and doesn't feel good. When you think of like this future event as just going perfectly and, you know, even just being silly or funny or like, you know, just something great happening that, you know, probably that won't happen, but like just associating the event with positive things in your mind will actively make your brain calm down. And I wish I had some kind of scientific article to back that up right now, but just trust me, source, just trust me. But you can really apply that to so many things, and just the power of your mind is so incredible. And sometimes things like that feel silly because your logical brain knows what you're doing, and it's like, okay, this obviously, no one's going to be giving me a foot massage, and it's not like oh my god, I'm upgraded to first class immediately, or we know whatever the situation is that you're imagining. But your emotional brain is going to calm down. And so many, you know, life hacks and little tips and tricks and wellness trips and self-care, sometimes they're just so like, oh my god, let's take a bath or like go on a walk or like but it's about your emotional brain. Like obviously your logical brain is like, yeah bitch, I know, but like your emotional brain, your vagus nerve, your animal brain, they're just like animals at the end of the day, and they need to just, you know, have some tips and tricks to calm themselves down, because your logical brain cannot always do that. So how do we even get onto talking about that? I think just like having anxiety about doing new things or trying new things, or even just taking risks, you know, and some people just have no problem doing that. It's like, how? But I feel like a lot of us do, and especially just in our culture of capitalism and perfectionism and hustle culture, you know, oh, I always have to be, I don't know, making more money on my next thing, and especially being a woman, and, you know, oh, you're not good enough, you're not perfect enough. If you buy this product, you'll be perfect, you'll be more attractive, you'll be more valuable, you'll be more loved. So it just really affects us in so many different ways. And I think, like with everything, awareness is really the first step to, I don't know, overcoming it, and just kind of knowing tips and tricks on how to settle your body and just catch yourself in the act of like perfectionist thinking or anxiety thinking or whatever it may be. Why I'm like, getting inspired by this. The more I experience life and learn about shit, the more I just, you know, really value just want to like to sum it up, good people, bro. Like, again, people who are true to their word, people who, I admire people who do take risks and put themselves in potentially uncomfortable situations. I admire people who are willing to have uncomfortable conversations, or who are straightforward, or who put themselves first. You know, I admire people who tell me no just in a straightforward way. I admire people who aren't afraid to fail, you know, and I think that just takes a certain level of courage. And when you are stuck in this like, you know, anxiety or like perfectionist way of thinking, it's like, courage is like the hardest thing to practice, because you have all these voices in your head and probably like years of, you know, conditioning from society, from your family, from, I don't know, teachers at school of like, oh, you need to be perfect, you need to get that A+, like otherwise you're not worthy, you won't, you know, bro, my teacher in elementary school would tell us like, well, you don't want to work at McDonald's, do you? Like, looking back, kind of like, classist. But yeah, it's just like constantly ingrained into us to be better and to like do better and to like do a good job, and if we don't, then it's like, oh my god, we're just worthless. So just something to think about. Let me know, have you dealt with perfectionism, perfectionist ways of thinking, anxiety, and it could just, you know, you could just say yes in general, or is it, you know, about a specific thing? Have you felt it about your body, about how you look, especially as a woman? Have you felt it in your relationships? Have you felt it just in, you know, your dreams, your goals, like your career, schoolwork? I feel like that's really where it starts. But yeah, and I think I mentioned this in, again, a past episode, but I think what really helps is just knowing, again, like knowledge is power when you're able to define something like, oh, I'm not, like what I'm feeling is valid, obvi, but like I don't have to think like this or live like this. Like there are ways, there are tools, things I can do to live my life the way that I want and to feel the way that I want, you know? I don't have to be constantly in this like perfectionist shame, anxiety, like loophole of death, you know? we can get past it. Hey. So I will link the article down below. Such a good article, like so validating, especially if you've experienced this. And yeah, so last topic, y'all, I just really quick wanted to go over just the astrology for June. This is from Astro.com. This month, it is advisable to communicate sincerely and thoughtfully. Saturn begins its long phase of retrograde on June 4th until October 3rd. This is a good time to have serious conversations and finalize agreements. Also, Mercury goes direct tomorrow on the 3rd. There's a full moon in Sagittarius this month on June 14th. In a somewhat ambivalent quality of time, some aspire to accomplish great things. Success and failure are close together, and painful frustration is a distinct possibility. Persistence is the key to success these days. Only when Venus enters Gemini on June 23rd will the quality of time become more lighthearted again. On June 21st, the Sun enters the realm of emotional Cancer. Family issues, belonging, and security are themes that will increasingly occupy us over the next few weeks, especially during the days of the June 29th new moon. Practice serenity during these days. It is a good time to quietly turn your attention to the marginalized and those close to you. So I will link that down below. There was a lot of like other things and just like daily, transits and whatnot that are going to be happening this month. But I feel like just in general, hopefully this month is more of a breather because Mercury is out of retrograde and also we are out of the eclipse season. So although there are a few things here like, on this day, old debts may be coming up, or like, relationships may be tumultuous this day. In general, I just feel like this month is going to feel better. So if you're interested, look it up. And even just on TikTok, there's so many like astrologers. And on Instagram, I feel like I really enjoy Instagram astrology content because it's so, especially the accounts I follow, I will try to remember to link them down below. I think it's like Typewriter Astrology and Leap of Faith Quotes or something. But they're just updated so frequently, usually every day. And that's how I've been really staying on top of like what's happening in the sky. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you have an amazing first weekend of June. First weekend out of Mercury retrograde. Bitch, you better live it up or at least do some journaling. And let me know what you want me to talk about in next week's episode. Don't forget to screenshot this or take an aesthetic boomerang or picture, of your hot girl walk, of you watching on your TV with your cat. I don't know. Tag me. I would love to repost. And thank you so much for listening. I will talk to you guys next week.